Hey everyone, this is Blanton with Once Upon a Homestead, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing the use of eggshells in the soil and why you would want to use those. So, right here we have some of our guinea fowl eggs, the shells anyway, left over from when we were cooking them up. We have 40 of them in the incubator currently, and we kind of ran out of room, so now we're just eating them. So, eggshells are used just like you would calcium carbonate. So what you're going to do is you're going to crush up your eggshells with you can do it by hand, or you can just use pestle and mortar, or just kind of smash them up by hand, whatever you want to do. And what's going to happen here is your eggshells are going to slowly dissolve in your acidic soils, and it's going to balance your pH of your soil to around a 6.8, which is pretty good for growing most of your common garden crops. And it takes them a while to dissolve, and it takes a while for that to become effective. You can increase the way that these dissolve by baking them. You would bake them at about 200 degrees for about a half an hour, and that would just help break down the shells a little bit. But what you'd want to do when you're planting with these, if you have enough of them, till them into your entire garden. Otherwise, sprinkle them in, and then here is where you would put your new plant, and you would stick that right in there, pack it around, and then those eggshells will slowly dissolve in. The other thing you can do is just kind of spread them around on top and let them slowly dissolve into the actual soil. Like I said, it acts as almost like calcium carbonate and balances your pH to roughly a 6.8. So it'll help your really acidic soils become a little more alkaline. It's just beneficial for most plants. Plants that really like eggshells are going to be things like your pepper plants and your tomato plants. And both of those are going to benefit from the calcium in the soil. It's a little windy. And gunk. So, kids' toys are blowing around out here. The pepper plants and the tomato plants especially are going to benefit from these crushed eggshells. The calcium and other minerals that are in this are going to break down into the soil. And it's also going to help reduce something called root rot, because it helps kind of kill a lot of the fungus that is growing near it as well. I believe it's called top blossom rot is another thing that it will help negate. So eggshells have a lot of uses. You don't want to throw them out. If you're not using them in your garden right now, crush them up and throw them into your compost pile, because then you're also going to help balance the pH of that, and you're going to increase the calcium levels of that actual soil. So when you use it in your garden, it's going to be even better. So don't waste them. Definitely want to save them and use them for other things. There's plenty of things you can do with that. But we're also going to discuss the other factors in root rot, and that is drainage. Drainage is a huge issue with that. And one of the things that you can do if you're doing like potted plants, like this is, I'm going to use something this size for smaller herbs and stuff like that, like cilantro and basil. I've grown basil in this exact potter already, and it's gotten 2 feet tall and really bushy. So I mean, you can grow most of your herbs in a potter like this. But anyway, this has a little bottom tray here that acts as an overflow. So what that allows is for the water to drain all the way through this and sit into that tray. So then it acts as a bottom waterer, and it can actually soak up through. But it also drains. It doesn't let it overflow. So then your water doesn't become stagnated in there and not have anywhere to go, and make the bottom of the pot really kind of murky and stinky. And, it never has anywhere to drain. So the roots are constantly just sitting in mucky, wet soil. And that's not good for them. Eventually, fungus will start growing on the roots, and that will be pretty damaging to them, or even kill the plant. You can remedy it by taking it out of that soil, and you actually will end up cutting a lot of the fungus covered roots off. You want to keep as many of the bigger roots as you can, and you rinse them very thoroughly in cold water, and then replant the entire plant in fresh potting soil or in your garden, wherever you're going with it. That will help, kind of reduce any fungal spores, and it'll also help, get it into something that is easier to drain, or at least fresh soil that isn't stagnated and soupy with all the water that's been sitting in it. That'll help a lot of your potted plants. When it has something like drainage issues, one of the biggest problems is root rot. And then once root rot starts, then you get all kinds of funky things happening to your leaves, and your flowers will end up dying. Your plant may not actually produce any functional fruits or vegetables, and it also could just die from it. So definitely something you want to take into account as you're gardening here, especially when you're using buckets and flower pots and these kind of planter trays and stuff like that. You don't want to, encourage disease in your plants. Now, there's a lot of other things out there that could be causing issues, but right now we're in a little bit of a cold snap. I'm sure you can hear the wind as we're going here, but what's happening is we're in the middle of May. It's the 12th, I think, or 13th or something. I forget. And it's cold. It was 36 last night. We had a frost warning, and again, went out and covered the plants, at least the very delicate ones, just in case. But we didn't seem to have any real heavy frost last night, so it ends up being just it was just chilly. But that's really unusual weather for this time of year, so it's not something we normally have to deal with in the middle of May. But one of the issues that you come across is frost damage with your plants. Now, there's not a whole lot you can do to remedy frost damage. That is, the cells are killed by piercing with ice crystals, just like it would in frostbite in a human. It's basically frostbite in a plant. So you can't really do a whole lot to save the leaves that are already killed. What you can do is you can use natural fertilizers around the damaged plants to help them kind of boost what's already there. And if anything's left, it'll start regrowing. Usually if the roots are still good, the plant will be fine and it'll regrow, as much as it can. But if the roots have been completely damaged, then that plant will end up dying. So you want to, do your best to, keep the plants healthy. In this weather, you want to cover them as much as possible overnight. But it seems like this was the last week we were going to have any frost warnings. So now we're going to get into, your normal planting season. Right now, I still have about half the garden to plant. I held off on a couple of them just because, the weather seemed pretty sketchy. So I'm going to be planting those later this week. It seems like the lows are going to be in the 40s, which is fine for planting. Even your delicate plants aren't going to be damaged by it. It's just going to slow their growth, that's all. But then once, we're into June, it will probably be warm all day, and most of the evening it'll be pretty decently warm out. Anyway, it's not going to get down to the 40s in June. At least I hope not. So with the, if you have any frost damaged plants, as long as the roots are still good, give it some TLC and, do your best to help the plant kind of bounce back from that damage. If it can't bounce back, obviously replant, restart, don't give up. Gardening is always, it's always a little bit of a challenge. So you have to prepare for failure occasionally. And that means have some extra seeds and maybe start a little later, if you need to, or restart completely if you need to, but just don't give up. There's a lot of things you can do. And if your plants failed, there's a lot of late plants that you can put in that'll still give you plenty of vegetables. So don't let that discourage you. There's a lot of things you can do, even if you get damage, even if you get rot, even if you get frost, damage and stuff like that. Even if a deer comes by and eats up all your plants, you can do plenty of things out there to remedy that. So just don't give up. keep going. And if you have any questions, you know, always give us a shout. Remember, we're all in this together. And don't forget to, you know, like the channel, subscribe, and if you, you know, it would be great if you could follow us on Instagram and our Facebook page as well. So I hope everyone has a great one, and we'll see you later. Well, this isn't going to be very good for the crops. Some hail. It's small right now, so it's probably not really going to damage anything, but doesn't always help matters. Birds don't seem to care too much.